Hey everyone, and welcome to the Sunny Go One Piece podcast. On this episode, we are going to be taking a detour, and I want to take a couple episodes to talk about those moments in One Piece that were especially emotionally impactful to me, and I have a special guest. Sandra is here back with me to talk about those special moments. And yeah, what do I mean by emotionally impactful or special moments? So these are those moments throughout the series that affected me with kind of elevated emotions or just resonated with me on a deeper level than just hype or fun or just those cool moments. And that's not to say some of these moments weren't hype, but they hit us with some other set of emotions, or they stayed with us long after we finished reading or watching them. So moments like Zoro's "Nothing Happened" from Thriller Bark is one of the best moments in the series, but it won't be on this list because that was just mostly pure hype and nothing else. Similarly, like when Luffy breaks out Gear Second for the first time against Bluno, while awesome, but again, that was mostly just cool hype for us, or for me personally. So this list won't be in any particular order, nor is this ranking these in any particular order. We're just going to be talking about specific moments throughout the series. And yeah, I'll be breaking this up into several podcast episodes, so this is going to be kind of like a series. But for the first one, I wanted to have Sandra on here so that we can talk about some of the big ones. And yeah, I kind of came up with like a list of over like 30 to 40 moments. So we're just going to be talking about like probably our favorite like 10 to 12 of them. I should note that while this one will have a few spoilers for all the way up to Onigashima, some of the future ones will also have spoilers for Egghead Island as well. And currently, this is being recorded as of the release of chapter 1095. And episode, 1080, I think, came out this week? So let's start this off with the first one. Sandra, you want to kick it off for us?
Sure, and I've already, as you can see, I've already been crying. So this is just very emotional. All right, so for me, this is first in the series. I think it's also one of my most impactful moments of the entire series, like just for me personally, because it's the moment that made me really like fall in love with One Piece, and it made me realize like why it was such a beloved manga for so many people. And that is the moment when Nami asks Luffy to help her. So this part, up until now, she's held such a strong front in front of all of the other crew members, and she now absolutely loses it. And she's been telling Luffy and the others to stay out of her business, to leave this island this entire time. She just starts screaming Arlong's name, like the most desperate scream ever, and like stabbing herself. And seeing Luffy grab her wrist, and then her breaking down crying and saying, "Luffy, Tusken." Oh my god, I'm already crying.
Are you going to make it through this episode?
I don't think I'm going to make it through, but just her finally breaking down and asking for help is, yeah, it's so emotional. And then the way Luffy responds, and I think before this, Luffy has not even, like, he doesn't know all of Nami's backstory. Like, he doesn't know what she's been dealing with on the island. He doesn't even know why she's, like, so pissed right now, and, like, why is she stabbing herself? But he just, like, sees her clearly in pain, and without a hesitation, he's like, you know, "Of course I will," or...
Yeah, I think this moment is definitely the first moment where most people find that One Piece is like something special and worth watching. And for very good reason too, because the way this moment builds up is so amazing, because like the flashback, and I think it's just the fact that you get the sense that Nami has been holding in so much, and that the way that Akemi Okumura like plays that like visceral screaming of like I don't like as she stabs, it's crazy. And then obviously sort of that cathartic moment where Luffy does put the hat on her and screams,
"Yeah,
of course," and then you have that moment where he just dead serious looks at the other three and goes, "Let's go," and then they're like, "Oh." It's so awesome how that moment plays out. And I think one of the things that I really like about this moment is it's not just that Nami was betrayed, but she's about to lose everything. She lost all her money. She basically has lost her future. And now, and this is kind of, again, this is what I didn't quite like about the change in the live action, but in the anime, you have the fact that she finds out in this moment that her like family and all the villagers of Kokoyashi have basically been keeping that secret in, and she basically just threw away 8 years that she could have had with them by not doing this deal. But now she sacrificed all that time, and now she's just going to lose it all anyways. And that really sends her over the edge. And it's like, yeah, she's basically about to lose everything. And yeah, this moment really hits you hard. And I don't know how you can't not like, be really like sad and angry, but also the walk to Arlong Park is just so amazingly hype, but also very
badass.
It's like incredibly like cathartic. And this moment also has some comedy too, when they actually get to Arlong Park and you see Johnny and Yosak just like sitting there all beat up. I also really like that little touch too. But yeah, that's definitely one of the early best like emotional moments for sure.
If you hear rustling on this side, it's because I'm getting more tissues from the tissue box.
Let's move on to the next one. So we're going to go chronologically with this one. The next one is obviously Luffy and Usopp's falling out during Enies Lobby, as well as kind of in combination with Usopp returning to the crew after this is all resolved. So yeah, go ahead, Sandra.
Yeah, this one is, I think this is like up until this point, probably the darkest moment. Easily the darkest moment of the series. It feels like when this happens, when Usopp and Luffy have their fight, it feels like this cannot be repaired. Like it feels like there's no going back from this. And in watching it in this moment, it really feels like Usopp cannot take back what he's done or said, and like Luffy can't take it back either. And it just feels like there's no way this is going to be repaired. It's just like something is broken, and it's just so dark and so low. And then seeing the different reaction of like the crew to this fight as well is extremely emotional. Like I feel like I'm like Nami in that situation. Like that's like how Nami was feeling is like how I was feeling in that situation. Like watching this and being like, I can't believe this is happening. And I'm just like sobbing.
Yeah, I think this is definitely one of the most emotionally charged scenes in the entire series, because it's not just sad seeing them fight, but it's like really chilling. I remember when I first read this, the very first time I read this, I was just becoming really numb seeing this, because it's such a tonal shift to what you're used to with One Piece up till this point. Because yeah, there have been like sad and tragic moments, but it's never been like affecting the Straw Hats dynamic. Like it's always happening to them from an external force. And so to see the breakdown from within is really hard to watch.
Yeah.
And then you have that scene, where Luffy almost kicks Usopp off the crew, and Sanji like has the right of mind to like step in and just kick the hell out of Luffy and scolds him for that, is another really like, it's a great character moment for Sanji, but also incredibly chilling, because you see that Luffy is not infallible. He's not this always happy-go-lucky guy. He's just constantly, happy, but this is a side of Luffy that we have never seen. And it's really like jarring to watch. And I think probably one of the more like harder things to experience is also the fight, and seeing each crew member, like you said, like each crew member's reaction to it, like Zoro's stoic watching of that, and then Chopper just like completely like beside himself trying to figure out how to get past all of that.
One other thing was when they're doing the fight, they like show, at least in the anime, they're like recapping all of the good times.
Oh yeah.
And like, like Usopp, his introduction to the crew, and like, I don't know, I think maybe they show like drawing like the flag, or just like all these like, and it reminds you like it's such a contrast to like the moment we're seeing now, because Usopp he's like the levity of the group, and like he brings so much like lighthearted like funniness. This is just a total complete 180. Like you're realizing like, I mean, like most of the time, you know, Usopp is a very underappreciated character.
I certainly think so.
So you like don't realize without him what the crew is missing, and oh god, just showing what you're missing without Usopp is just, yeah, from showing all those flashbacks to like seeing where you are right now with them like fighting and just thinking, oh my god, like he's never coming back to the crew, like we're never gonna have these good times again.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
and also like the battle, the physical battle between the two for the Going Merry is also really cool, but also gut wrenching to watch, seeing these two beat the hell out of each other, because Usopp, for all his sort of lackings, he actually puts up a pretty decent fight against Luffy and gets a lot of good hits on him. But that last Gomu Gomu no bullet to Usopp's gut to like finish the fight off was just crazy hard to watch. And then obviously there's that moment where Luffy, is walking back to the Going Merry, and then he's like crying, and then that moment where Zoro like tells him this is what it means to be a captain, and it's just really tough to watch. But
it's one of the, I think this moment is also like a really great moment for Zoro as like a demonstrating him like as kind of like the vice captain of the crew, and him saying like, I'm not going to respect you if you go back on this, and like let him come back. That part is it's gut wrenching, and it's also just the same time. It's just it's so dark.
Yeah, and he also has that great moment, obviously, when we get to the happy part towards the end, where everyone's willing to like reaccept him back into the crew, but Zoro makes a good point that they shouldn't accept him unless he does properly apologize. And yeah, that was also really cool. And like, yeah, it gives you a sense that this is a real crew. Because like, I don't know about you, but when I first read this moment, it's like, yeah, I guess this is still just a bunch of friends like traveling around the seas. But now you get to these like more serious moments where they're actually things on the line, and yeah, you get the sense that this is really something that needs to be addressed. And I really like that moment. And then obviously the return where they get to the coast, that moment is just really, because it's what Enies Lobby and Water 7 is about like 50 plus episodes, so you're like, you've been without Usopp for a good amount of time. And even when he was fighting alongside them, like,
were we without him?
It's true. Yeah, seeing that moment where Usopp's trying to make excuses and like trying to like rationalize it, and then finally he just breaks down after everyone's just ignoring him.
Yeah,
it is a really, really great moment to see where he just yells out, "Go, man!"
Yeah.
And then Luffy's just like ugly crying and stretching his arm out.
As was I.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Yeah, it's all a great moment. Next one, I believe, is the big one that pretty much it's going to be on everybody's list, and that is the Robin's I want to live moment in NES Lobby. So, yeah, this moment is probably one of the most iconic moments in anime history, not just One Piece, because everybody knows about this moment. Unfortunately, everybody knows about this moment because if you haven't watched One Piece, you've probably already seen this, and it's a huge spoiler. But yeah, just the raw emotions you feel here with sort of the immense weight of everything. And yeah, you go on this like roller coaster of emotions, not just the moment where she screams, but everything leading up to it. You have that moment where everyone collectively like gets onto the roof of the bridge, and this moment sends so many chills down your body when the six of them line up on the rooftop with the CP9 all on the other side behind Robin. But yeah, what did you think about this moment?
I surprisingly, it's such a iconic moment and it's so emotional. I don't even have that much to say about it, to be honest, because it's like it is what it is. It's she's allowing, like, Robin is finally allowing herself to like want this one thing, which is to live, which is like, oh my god, here I go again. It's like such a simple thing, but like she's been hunted as a child and told that she like shouldn't exist, and to see her like, yeah, like letting herself have this wish to live and to just be with the Straw Hats, that is, and yeah, it's, I don't know what else there is to say about it. It's emotional.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the more underappreciated parts about this is it's a long moment, because when you take it as in its totality, it includes the part where they all gather, but sandwiched in between is the whole flashback with Ohara and Robin's past. And I think one of the moments that often kind of gets overlooked is Saul's little speech about how nobody's meant to be alone in this world. And that quote always sticks with me because of not just for what it means for Robin, but just life in general. Like it's a really impactful quote for me, at least. And I always remember that quote when I remember this moment. And of course, Yamaguchi Yuriko's like performance here is incredible, and you really feel her scream like that, I want to live, or ikitai, like. And then of course Luffy screaming like ikitai to ie, or say you want to live, is another like just great performances all around. And then the music, and obviously with Sogeking like blasting the flag. It's just, you get this sense that One Piece take this huge leap up in terms of stakes and sort of tension level, I guess you can say. All right, so this is the big one. Obviously, the I want to live moment is one of the more iconic ones. This one is probably the most emotionally impactful for me. It's hard for me to even think about this moment without tearing up too. Is the Mary saves the Straw Hats as well as saying goodbye to her. So continue on from the same arc, we get the final resolution. And yeah, this is one of those moments like how you feel about the I want to live. There's not really much to say because it's the epitome of emotional moments in One Piece. And yeah, so both of these moments, they're related and they're both surrounding Mary and the Enies Lobby. But I think the first moment always, I love this moment where the Mary saves the Straw Hats. It's like almost euphoric when she shows up. And I still can't forget the overwhelming amount of emotions that hit me when I first read this moment, because first of all, this outcome for me was completely out of my mind as a possibility. So I wasn't even thinking about this. Like, you know, when you read, you kind of like think, okay, these are the potential things that could happen, or you start theory crafting, you start thinking about it. This honestly was not even in my mind. So when Usopp starts to get emotional after looking down, it like hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, oh my god, the Going Merry is here. And yeah, it's just like when he yells at Zoro that they still have a nakama is just amazing. And yeah, when you see Mary, it just hits you with like joy, excitement, hype, almost bewilderment and relief. It's like I feel like it's like the TV or comic book version of getting like a big hug. But yeah, what do you think?
Don't mind me. I'm just over here quietly sobbing, grabbing another tissue. God, watching this in the anime, when you hear Mary's like cute little innocent voice.
Yeah.
Oh my god. And that cute little innocent voice saying that I just wanted to go on like one last journey with you all.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that part is so freaking sad. And yeah, I, like you said, I don't know what else there is to say about this. Mary is true nakama.
Yeah. Yeah, it goes from that crazy high to sort of the incredible sadness with the funeral. And I don't think I've ever cried so hard for a fictional moment in
Oh my
any
god, and the
story.
song.
Yes. Dear friends, yeah. And I specifically remember this day almost as clear it was yesterday, because like I was reading this for the first time in the Tankobon like volumes, and I remember crying so much that like tears fell onto the page, and it actually kind of like warped some of the page because of how hard I was crying. It's kind of embarrassing how hard I was crying reading this the first time. And one thing I really loved about this moment, and it's not part of the funeral itself, but the scene before it, where you get that mini flashback of Iceberg, and you hear the Mary like pleading Iceberg to help fix her so that she can go back out. And this moment, yeah, he doesn't even believe it himself as what he's doing. Like, he thinks he's crazy for trying to fix her. And then when the Mary says thank you, and Iceberg is just like frozen, like that moment, it's just like it hits you so hard. But I think, yeah, like you said, when Luffy starts to cry, and then when the Mary starts to speak, that's when I lost it. I lost it there. It really hits you hard, because you start to see Luffy desperately apologizing to Mary after she apologizes for all the things that the dumb things that the crew has done to the Mary. And then you see Chopper just like screaming, and Nami falling to her knees. And then I think the hardest one actually was, even though you don't get to see his face, you see like this like stream of water just flowing down Soge King's mask. And yeah, just seeing that, yeah, I was honestly really shocked by my reaction to this scene when I first experienced it, because I was still pretty young at this point, and yeah, I wasn't really like that. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it really made me realize like what good storytelling is, because of how much this affected me. If you can tell a story that can get you that emotionally invested, it's like, wow, this is like what a good storytelling quality is. Alrighty, so yes, that is another great one. Next one is, this one we go from like, it's not really sad or happy or anything, but when the Straw Hats get wiped by Kuma on Sabaody Island.
You don't think that part is sad?
For me, it wasn't sad so much. I think it wasn't necessarily like heartfelt or heartbreaking. It's like, for me, I felt more shocked and stunned.
Yeah.
It was like very chilling and numbing, and I think this scene was significant for me because of all the emotions just kind of drain out of you while watching or reading this moment.
Yeah.
Because up till now, the Straw Hats have mostly beaten every obstacle with relative ease when you really think about it. Like sure, they've struggled and they've been beaten up and battered, but they come out with a victory with a pretty good margin, I feel like. But I think everything changed when their luck finally caught up to them. And they got lucky with like Aokiji or like Kuma on Thriller Bark, but Kizaru was a completely different beast, because he and the Pacifistas and Sentomaru are like a completely unstoppable force to the Straw Hats at this moment. And you realize they're gonna lose. And it really like starts to like hit you hard and drains that that emotion from you completely, and you're just stunned at what you're watching. Like, this is supposed to be like a happy-go-lucky shonen battle anime, and you're seeing some of the most like hardest things to watch, because you're seeing all your heroes basically just get beaten down.
Yeah, I think like a lot of times we talk about how, we are experiencing things through Nami's point of view, or we're experiencing things as Usopp. Like, Usopp is, the stand-in for the audience here and is showing the emotions that the audience feels. But I feel like in this moment, we are experiencing what Luffy's feeling, which is like what is happening? Like, what can we do right now? Like, Luffy is just straight up yelling at, Usopp to run, right? And like screaming like, his crewmates' names. Like, he can't do anything but like watch them disappear one by one. And the two that are like so like the most sad for me, well, actually, also honorable mention to Brooke. He like I think he's like in the middle of a joke, and he like gets disappeared, which is kind of like it like is kind of a brief moment of levity, but then he doesn't even get to finish the joke. He's like gone. You're like, oh my god, like he's gone. And that's like that starts to sink in, and then when Nami is like saying like Luffy like Tasukete again,
Yeah.
and she doesn't even like finish that. She can't even like finish saying that, and she like disappears. And for the first time, like Luffy can't help her when she asks. And then the other one that is like so emotional is when Robin is screaming Luffy, like she's screaming for Luffy's help too. Like she's like reaching for him, and he like can't get to her, and then he like reaches out his hand, and she like is disappeared.
Yeah. I think, for me, the one that hits the hardest was actually the very first one, which is Zoro. Because up until now, like, Zoro has always been sort of that stable pillar that you can always depend on. But not only is he the first one to get wiped, he actually freezes because he's got PTSD from Kuma from Thriller Bark. And, like, you never see this kind of weakness from Zoro. And to see that, it's very sobering because you don't normally expect Zoro to be in a moment of weakness. No, even if he's, like, losing or bleeding to death, he's still Zoro. But in this moment, like, you see him falter. Like, he drops to his knees at the sight of Kuma, and he freezes. He can't do anything. And when you see that, you're like, shit, they're in trouble. Like, if Zoro is having this kind of experience, and then you see Sanji, like, basically useless. Like, after he kicks Kuma, he, like, hurts his leg, and he can't do anything to the or to Kuma. And then poor Usopp, the lone fighter left standing, trying to desperately, but also hopelessly fight off Kizaru, while Sanji and Brook are on the ground. Like, it's like, yeah, it's incredibly, like, stunning to see this kind of experience for them.
Complete overpower.
Yeah, it's a very bone-chilling moment. And then the final moments where we see Luffy on the ground writhing in frustration and anguish at his own failures, it's really tough to watch. You don't see Luffy in that type of emotional state where he's completely at a loss as to what to do and just like crying and frustrated. It's a very sobering and numbing moment, I feel like. But yeah, continuing on with Luffy's failures during this moment, the next moment is another really big one. It's obviously Ace dying in Luffy's arms and Luffy going catatonic. And yeah, this is another really big one. Ace dying at Marineford was a huge turning point in the series. For one, it actually showed a brutal murder of a beloved character right in front of our eyes. And this one also hit particularly hard because by this point, kind of Oda has established that he's unwilling to kill anyone in the present. And this is really the first time he does it, which makes the moment hit even harder, I feel like.
So this moment for me was actually spoiled for me.
Oh.
Shout out to Nico. But yeah, my friend spoiled this to me. He was, I think we were talking about, I think I had just watched the part where Mary dies and is burned, and I was saying how I cried really hard, and my friend goes, I think the only part I cried was when Ace died, and I was like, what?
Oh my god.
But yeah, even though I knew that Ace was going to die, I still felt hope when Luffy, like, I'm watching this entire Marineford arc, and I'm just like, I know he's gonna die, right? I'm just like waiting for it to happen. But he gets there, he unchains him, he like gets him out of his handcuffs, he comes out in this like burst of flame, and I'm like, I still felt like hope, like, oh my god, like, yay. And then they have like the fight alongside each other, and then he's like killed. And that was still, even knowing that was going to happen, I still felt that like gut wrench when it did. Yeah, and I think up until now too is like we didn't get that much time with Ace at all. You only see him like in Arabasta and then kind of in the
he gets like 1 or 2 episodes with like where he's fooling around with Buggy.
Yeah.
And then yeah, you get to see him in Impel Down.
Mm-hmm. And like the well, like a little bit of the Blackbeard fight.
Oh yeah, the Blackbeard fight.
But like we really didn't get that much time with him, and so that was just it was like a too soon. Like he was snatched away like way too soon. So sad. For
that very reason, I think this moment, I will admit, it didn't hit me emotionally so much because of Ace's death itself, but because of Luffy's reaction to it is what really hits hard, because they build up his relationship to Ace, I think, pretty well, and also building up Luffy's character. And yeah, when you see Luffy in that moment, it really is hard. Again, it's hard to watch Luffy, because by this point, I mean, we've talked about all these moments. He's taken L after L after L, and finally, like, you get to this big one where he basically, you see what it meant to him to fail to save his brother. And Ace's final monologue and message to all his loved ones is also so heartbreaking, because despite it being one of gratitude, it's also filled with like a tremendous amount of guilt at his own existence, which wasn't even his own fault. But it's like, it's really hard to see that this man, he lived a good life, but at the same time, he feels incredibly guilty about his own life because of his father's legacy. I think, yeah, this moment does get a lot of criticism because people say that there wasn't enough screen time for Ace, or for us to get invested in Ace to actually feel anything for his death. But I say that wasn't necessarily the point of the scene, because
no,
I think, do I think it might have been better if Oda was able to insert the Gray Terminal flashback earlier before this scene? But I don't think that was either necessary either.
I don't think so. And what happened, the result of this was I then cried nonstop through that entire next arc where they do like the flashback. And I think that made that whole arc much more impactful, and that whole flashback. And yeah, I probably like just, I don't know, for however long it took me to watch this, I cried for that many weeks. I was just like sobbing. I literally had, I remember like a mountain of tissues next to me, like watching the next couple. And that kind of leads to the next moment, which was when Jinbei reminds Luffy that he still has his nakama.
Yes. This is probably one of my favorite moments in all of One Piece. Not just because of what it serves in the story, but I think for me, the philosophy that Jinbei imparts on Luffy here has really affected me in real life. And I carry that quote with me all the time. And yeah, the moment where after Ace's death, the aftermath is pretty heart-wrenching. But, when Luffy regains his consciousness after the war, he really has to take in the reality that Ace is dead. And he begins to melt down and starts to self-harm himself. And it's really brutal and frankly hard to watch, seeing Luffy like this, where he's just hurting himself in anger and frustration. And something that's not quite as obvious about this, it's the culmination of all of his failures, dating all the way back to Long Ring Longland, where he gets defeated by Aokiji. Like, when you really think about it, he's been losing ever since then. It's really hard to see Luffy like this, and it also, you obviously, if by this point you know that it also brings up the idea that he lost Sabo. Like, he also lost Sabo this way too. So now he's failed to protect both of his big brothers, and it's just too much for Luffy to handle. And I think it was the most important to see Luffy like this, because it shows that even a man like Luffy can go through ups and downs of life like us. He can lose hope. He can drop into like a seemingly inescapable depression and even destructive behavior. But he also shows that with the right, mindset and a good support system, that there is a better way and a better future. And I love that Jinbei, of all people, is the one to show him this.
Yes.
And that quote, it's like, that quote is so awesome. It's like, don't keep counting what you've lost. What's gone is gone. What do you still have? And then it's here Luffy realizes that he starts to count off his fingers and he counts his crew members and his nakama. And it's a really beautiful moment showing that, yeah, you can mourn the loss of loved ones, but you can't let it consume you and lose sight of all the wonderful things you still have. The other aspect of this moment that gets me so emotional is that this moment also brings a moment all the way back from Arabasta full circle when Ace asked the Straw Hats to take his troublesome brother and take care of him, almost as if he knew he wasn't going to always be there to protect him. And in this moment, it's not only the thought of his nakama that saved him, but the fact that Jinbei, a future nakama, is the one that guided Luffy out of this darkness. It's such a great moment, like that comes full circle when you have the context of the past and the future when Jinbei actually officially joins.
I'm sorry, I'm being so quiet. I'm just crying and nodding over here.
So let's see. The next moment is obviously sort of the full circle of this last one, and that's when the Straw Hats reunite after the time skip.
Yeah, so I added this one. I think just for me, this is probably one of my favorite episodes. Yeah, just the whole, like, the imposter Straw Hats and, like, Luffy running into them and, like, being, you know, just thinking that they're the real ones. And it's just so goofy. And that's, like, that comedy is so funny. But when he actually finally reunites and sees, like, Zoro and Sanji, and he has that, like, oh, you hear, like, Zoro go like, "Oi, Luffy," and he's like, "Oh, like there's no mistaking, that's the real one." Like, yeah. It just like it's such a happy, emotional moment. I always tear up watching. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. I cry really easily, but this is one of the like happy tear moments for me is when he meets up with them. Just the epicness of also him like dodging the pacifistas with ease.
Yes.
Is just, yeah, again, like happy tears. Then like Zoro and Sanji like getting rid of one, like them like fighting. I'm like, oh my god, like the camaraderie between all of them hasn't changed. And seeing them all together and like it's kind of like a chaotic, like they're running away. It's just like classic Straw Hats dynamic, and it just felt so good seeing them back together after all of this time, because for me, like, this is around the time that I, like, got caught up to where the anime was in real time. And so it had been just so long since we'd seen them together. And, like, you know, I'm sorry, but I don't care about Weatheria. I don't care about these little, like, side, like, little islands that they've been on. Like, I've been waiting for so long for them to get back together. And I'm sure it's even longer for, you know, manga readers and, you know, however long you'd been waiting, but like I was so ready for them to be back together, and it just felt so good when they finally did reunite, because as much as, you know, like I love the individual characters, nothing beats them being all together. It just sucks when they're like separated, and I mean, we get more arcs further down the line, right, where they're separated, and it's just always so awesome seeing them all together.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they get separated in future story arcs, but it's never to the point where it's just Luffy. Like, this was a long time without the other 8 characters. Yeah, for me, I would sum this moment up with like just extreme joy and excitement. I was incredibly happy to see them back together, but also just the unknown of what 2 years would have done, because I don't know. For me, when I was first reading this, I did not expect a time skip to happen. So it took me by surprise that a time skip was coming. And this was still like, you know, when Twitter and social media it wasn't new or anything, but like it wasn't quite the pervasiveness that it is now where everything gets spoiled. And so this still caught me by surprise that when that last chapter rolled around just before this moment where you see Luffy's hat on the rock, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's a time skip. And yeah, I was like, oh my god, like we're going to get to see really different versions of these characters. But the fact that like they're all pretty much still the same people, they just look different.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, just seeing Luffy just one-shot a pacifista.
Yeah.
was incredible to see, because you realize when you think about Sabaody and how much all 9 of them struggled to take out one of them, and Luffy just knocks one out in one hit now, is just, it really shows sort of the growth and the potential for the rest of the series, because you now get a sense of like, okay, the Straw Hats are insanely strong now, and you're just on pins and needles trying to like wait to see how this is going to actually play out now that they're this strong. Next, we're going to talk about probably a few different moments, but this all revolves around Whole Cake Island and the dynamic between Sanji and Luffy. Their fight, where Sanji ends up like unconsciously making the crew's favorite foods, and then Sanji returning to Luffy and the Straw Hats. This entire subplot is incredible. So I think this moment was handled so damn well, with like insane emotional highs and lows. Like, first off, the fight between Sanji and Luffy is brutal, because where Usopp, obviously that was really hard to watch, but like Usopp is no match for Luffy. But Sanji actually, like, he can't beat Luffy, but he can do some damage, obviously being one of the monster trio. The other thing too that's hard about this is that for the most part, Luffy actually refuses to really fight back, because he knows Sanji is doing this against his will. So he's basically just taking a beating. It's hard to watch when Sanji unleashes on Luffy, especially watching this through Nami's horrified eyes. It is very difficult to watch, and I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, when one of the worst, not worst, but emotionally worst parts of this was when Nami slaps Sanji.
Yeah.
Oh, that part is just, and she does't call him Sanji-kun, and just she's pissed.
Yeah.
By the way, shout out to Nami during this whole Cake Island arc. She's just awesome in this arc, and I love like the moments where we get to see Nami. She's such an important part of the crew, not just as like a navigator, but as like she's Luffy's like right-hand woman,
Yeah.
So
I honestly think she is a second vice captain. Like,
yeah.
she takes control during specific moments, and I think that trinity of Luffy, Zoro, and Nami are basically the guiding captains, or commanders of the Straw Hats.
Yeah, it really shows like in this moment and in this whole arc where she slaps him, she's like dragging Luffy away. And then the part where I don't know if, I think, is it Luffy that says like, he says that he knows that it hurts Sanji more.
Yeah.
To him. Oh my god, like that part, and I think it like cuts to Sanji in the carriage, like crying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just so hard to watch.
But yeah, the real heart of this reunion, though, is where Sanji decides to return to Luffy to ask for forgiveness, and sort of, again, that thoughtful yet sort of unconsciously making each member's favorite foods to bring to Luffy without even realizing it. And he's not even sure that Luffy is still there at that spot, but he goes anyways. I think this moment was a bit more over the top in the anime, where they have Luffy fight off like 1 billion guys for some reason, just to extend this moment. But I think regardless of whether you experience this in the anime or the manga, it's just really touching on both sides when Sanji does return. And the actual apology and forgiveness in the anime, though, is done to perfection. This part, I do prefer the anime over the manga. Like, the acting here, especially by Hiroaki Hirota, who plays Sanji, was phenomenal. You can hear the sheer amount of pressure and weight that Sanji is feeling here. Like, when he's like torn between the fact that he wants to go join the Straw Hat or rejoin the Straw Hats, but he also can't abandon this abusive family that he just absolutely loathes, but he knows he can't abandon them. And then when he says he wants to return to the Sunny, like Sunny ni kairitai, like he's just like really struggling to say all this, and you can see how much pain he's in. Yeah, despite the huge stakes at play here, like we've all experienced similar frustration and pressure like this, and it's insanely relatable. I feel like, despite the elevated stakes that they have in One Piece, but we finally get to sort of that cathartic moment we've all waited for, where Sanji just wants to come home. And I love that despite how badass or silly these characters are, they're still incredibly human because Oda is never afraid to give them moments of actual like vulnerability, and especially from a masculine man like Sanji. And yeah, it hits you. It hits me very personally to see Sanji like this. And yeah, to cap it off, Luffy eating Sanji's dirty food so happily and he actually notices the fact that it has all the crew's favorite food was like really touching, of course. But I think the most like beautiful moment is when the sky starts to clear and that uplifting orchestral rendition of We Are starts to like blare in the background and Luffy smiling, saying, "Let's go bust up that wedding and save everyone." Oh, so good. And yeah, I tear up every time I watch this moment or read this moment. So fast forwarding to Wano. And this is also another sort of combination of moments. And I think for me, it's just the entire dynamic between Zoro and Sanji on the Onigashima raid, where you have this sort of dynamic with Zoro. And particularly the linchpin is when Sanji asks Zoro to kill him if necessary. And this is a really unexpected moment. And for me, it was very, I don't know how to like react to this moment when I first read it.
I reacted by crying.
Yeah?
If it's not clear by now. God, that okay, we always see Sanji and Zoro they're fighting for comedic relief all the time, right? And so we always see Zoro and Sanji fighting and having this like, it's like always done for comedic effect. But I feel like this arc, we're really seeing them. They're like brothers that fight. So yeah, just Sanji knowing that like that's the only person that he can count on to ask this enormous request of it just like speaks volumes to like their relationship as brothers. At the end of the day, no matter how much they fight or like they like hate each other on the surface, like they're still going to like be there for each other and when they need it the most.
Yeah, I think for me it's that warmth that you feel, that it's unspoken. But yeah, up till now you've basically seen this sort of combative relationship between Sanji and Zoro, to say the least. But yeah, this really cements the fact that they do like each other, that they do care for each other. Because I don't know what it is, but like there's a portion of the community that actually thinks that they hate each other for some reason. And I don't think at any point that they do hate each other. And I think one of the reasons why Sanji is always so hard on Zoro is because Sanji is a little frustrated, I think, at the fact that all the way back in Baratie, Zoro is the one that reignited his passion for going after the All Blue. Like when Zoro gets sliced down by Mihawk, Sanji is the one that most viscerally reacts. It's like, it would have been so easy for you to give up your dreams. And he doesn't. And he realizes like he needs to be like Zoro in that moment. And I think that's always frustrated him. And to see them finally like acknowledge each other, and yeah, Sanji trusting Zoro enough that if something goes wrong, you're the only person that I can trust to do that. But I also really love that moment where they do come together when they finally go after King and Queen. And you see that moment where it's like, hey, can you see it? It's like, once we beat these two, we can actually envision Luffy becoming the Pirate King. And that moment was so awesome. It really like hits you like a ton of bricks that these two are an unstoppable pair. And they are the wings of the Pirate King. And yeah, it really like gives you a lot of warmth and hope. I don't know. It's a very hard moment to like put into words. This one was very hard for me to sort of put into words. And in fact, I didn't write any notes for this because it was so hard to put into words like what this actually felt like. But it was something.
The other part that I loved in this arc was and I think I texted you when I saw this in the anime, was when Sanji is bandaging up Zoro.
Yes.
And they're like, I don't know what, they're like in like a closet or something. I don't know, like a broom closet, storage closet or something. And he's like bandaging him up, and they have like a bro moment in there of like, and it just like, you could tell like they like really care about each other. Like it feels like we're getting like a behind the scenes look at what they talk about when they're not trying to fight each other all the time. So yeah, and then that was just hilarious with Sanji carrying around Zoro in like this giant bandage state. So that, yeah.
Yeah, you really get to see that they care about each other throughout that entire raid. All right, so the last moment, and this is actually kind of cheating because it's like a collection of moments, but it is a very significant moment each time this particular thing happens, and that is every time a Straw Hat member declares that Luffy will become a Pirate King. And now, at this point in the story with Onigashima, we have actually gotten one from each of the members. But yeah, I guess of the 9, which ones stand out to you?
So speaking about Wano, Nami in Wano, when she is standing up to Ulti and not backing down from that fight, that was just one of the most, that I obviously sobbed during that part.
Yes, I love that one too.
Yeah, and I wish Usopp also did in that moment, because it's like, but I mean, I'm glad
he already got his moment.
I know he got his moment, but I wish that, you know, he should have done it too. But yeah, I love that moment for Nami, and yeah, I just love Nami.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the Nami one stands out. Usopp was also awesome to see in Arabasta versus Miss Merry Christmas after like he had his entire face crushed in.
Yeah.
I think my favorite one though is actually Jinbei.
Oh yeah.
Jinbei, that one, it made me feel like, oh my goodness, like this is like, not only is it hype, but incredibly like reassuring.
He's a warlord.
Yeah, because like it makes you feel like this could be very real.
Yeah.
When Jinbei does
validating.
Because of the fact that he is a Shichibukai, but the fact that he basically stares down Big Mom.
Yeah.
And has that epic like moment where he's basically saying like he can't be afraid of an emperor if he's going to be part of the crew of the future Pirate King.
Yep.
I mean, Frankie has a very similar moment like that in Wano after he runs over Big Mom with the bike, which is another reason why Frankie is another one that I really loved and glad that he got his moment. And yeah, Frankie and Jinbei are up there. I think Zoro actually got 2 of them, which was really cool. Obviously, he got the one after he loses to Mihawk, and then he gets the other one in Thriller Bark against Kuma. Both those, I think I prefer, despite how epic the Nothing Happened and the Thriller Bark moment is, I think I actually prefer the Mihawk one.
100%. Because
you see Zoro lose for the first time. And I think for me, that moment really cemented the fact that, One Piece is different. And I think episode 19 is another sort of entry point where I feel like if people watched One Piece, if they can get to 19, that they could also see that One Piece is different, because you really see Zoro opening up emotionally. Because up till now, he has some like outbursts of laughter, but he's pretty stoic for the most part. But you see him just sobbing, but also like really reassuring Luffy that he's never going to lose ever again. And it really hits you on a different level, at least for me. I remember when I read this thinking, wow, Zoro, like, not only did he lose, but he's like committing to Luffy on a deeper level. It's a very good moment for Zoro. I feel like one thing I do wish is I hope like Robin technically gets one in Wano, but I hope that Robin actually gets like a proper one. Like she does get that moment in Wano when she's facing Black Maria, but I hope she actually gets one where she actually like just singularly declares that Luffy it will become the Pirate King, because I do think she could stand to have like a more definitive one. But But yeah, that's pretty much everything for this one. Thanks you for listening to this long podcast. And yeah, this will definitely be a series. For at least I'll continue going. If Sandra wants to continue and join for some of the other ones too, that would be cool as well. But yeah, I have like enough to cover like 3 more episodes, so definitely check those out when they get released.
I've cried so many tears today.
But yeah, it's definitely something that I want to keep talking about because there are so many great moments in One Piece. But yeah, if you did enjoy this, send me a like or comment, and if you want to join me on this journey of rewatching One Piece, please consider subscribing. And yeah, I'll because I'm about to go on vacation, I'll be uploading this and one more episode, so we'll be taking a break from the rewatch, but it'll be at a very good stopping point since we're in between Impel Down and the beginning of Marineford. So we'll get back to Marineford in a couple episodes. But yeah, thanks for listening, and as always, thank you for taking the time to follow the podcast, and hope to see you on the next episode. Bye.